All right. Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I am your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time this evening. That's right, folks. We are doing an evening show. This is my monthly Dad Talk Roundtable, where I get together with some dads that I trust who have good heads on their shoulders, and we're going to talk about a topic. And today, we're going to talk about kids in public spaces. So let me bring in my dads that are here this evening. I've got Adam Coleman and I have Tyler Yonke. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Doing well.
Good.
All right. So we are going to talk about, so let me just kick this off. I'm going to pull this up on the screen to the best of my ability here. And basically, where is it? There it is. Okay. I want to put this on the screen. So this is what tipped me off for this conversation. We don't have to limit it to just this particular thing, but this went kind of viral probably last week, maybe a week before that. Let's see. I think that's good. All right. So this is Mount Washington Church official release. I don't know where Mount Washington Church is, but it's their notification of a policy change. Loud kid policy, effective immediately. At Mount Washington Church, we are committed to transparency and accountability in all matters of church life. The following document outlines our comprehensive procedures regarding loud children in worship. Please consider this your official notice of policy clarification. Effective immediately. If a family is considering visiting Mount Washington Church and they have a loud kid, the following options are available. Option number 1, the family should bring the kid. Option number 2, the family should make sure they bring the kid. Option number 3, the family is to see that the child is brought to church. And option number 4, the kid is absolutely welcome and expected. We believe the sound of children in worship is not a distraction. It is evidence of life growth and the future of the church. If your child makes noise, you are not bothering us, you are blessing us. Policy enacted, no exceptions. All right, gentlemen. So that's the church policy. What's your initial take on this? And let me see if I can get that off the screen. I don't know how to do this. While I figure out how to get this off of the screen, turns out I'm also technologically challenged here. The buttons don't seem to want to work the way. Let's try this. That'll work for now until I figure out something better. We were just talking before the show about how I'm technologically challenged in other areas and apparently using my own show as well. Anyway, what's your first thought, guys?
Well, who wants to go first?
I'll let you go, Tyler.
Okay. First of all, Mount Washington, I believe it's in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So we can dispel that one. My first reaction was, because I hadn't read this, I'd just seen like some people posting about it. I assumed it was the opposite, which was, hey, here's some guidelines for your noisy kids, rather than the open policy, which is fine. I mean, initial reaction, okay, fine. I'm a 4 kids. I know Adam has one, and DL, you have one, and then Jacob has a slew of kids as well, and his are younger, mine are older. But I was very conscious, and I always was, of the kids' behavior in public, to the point where you're going to the grocery store and you're walking, you park your car and you're walking. We're not walking down the middle of the road. You're walking close to the car, or you're in between, because the respect of someone else is paramount, at least to my kids, of how you behave, right? And it reflects on me. And it's easier to have your kids out and about with you if they just do little things that are socially acceptable. So I see that, and there would be parents that would see that, the church thing, and they would go to church and they would be, it didn't matter, your kid's crying, we're going to take them out just because it's respectful. So if that's a church policy, that's the church policy. There is something. I've had people come into my office with kids, and I do family law, so they're coming in there talking, and they bring their kid, and for whatever reason, some are really respectful, and I've had some that the kids are just unruly, and you can't even have a conversation. And I just don't understand that, and I would never put my kids. That just would not be acceptable. But that's interesting. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I'd be attending that church if it's unruly. I mean, what putting this in practice might be completely different. I mean, just saying, hey, you're all welcome here. And I get that, as my mom says, church is a place for sinners. So there we all go there, the hospital for them, and you're going to help. And maybe that's a point where you can, as a parent, you can try to help other parents, but that's a risky situation too.
Right. Adam, what you got?
Yeah. I guess we just don't know what prompted this. No one wakes up on a Monday and type this up and send it out. So something must have happened that triggered some sort of response that whoever is part of the church thinks was an overreaction from someone else because a child was a little bit loud, or maybe it was a crying baby, who knows. And they decided to write this. So I think it's in response to something that we have no idea about, rather than it meaning to be just, out of the blue, let's just make a random policy about loud children. But I will say, part of me says, I like this because there are a lot of areas where, talking to different parents, they feel like they can't take their kids places because your kid might be loud, or your kid might do this. They're just doing normal child stuff. And if someone is around you who's, let's say they're not a parent, and sometimes they are parents, but let's say someone's around you that's not a parent, they expect children to be like tiny soldiers, just stiff, never say anything, and so on and so forth when they're in a public space. This is not really a sidetrack, but it reminds me of when I'm on the airplane, people are like, oh, what about those crying babies? I'm like, why wouldn't they cry? You know how loud it is?
Right.
Air pressure.
I'm like, it's like, That's normal. And I remember one time sitting next, it was like 2 seats, and then in the middle was like 5 seats, right? So I was sitting in the aisle of the 2 seats, and I was looking at this lady who's just trying to manage her child. You can tell the child's very young and kind of just like a little bit all over the place, and kind of like talking a lot. And this lady was like turning around and saying something to her, and I didn't hear exactly what she said, but I can guess. And she was like, "What do you want me to do?"
Right.
Like she's I can't remember the age, but she might have been like 2. She's like, she's 2. Like, what do you want me to do? I'm she's a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, like, why would you even say that to someone? Like, what do you expect this child to do? I know adults who are agitated sitting in the same seat for hours on end, and they're all cramped. Like, why wouldn't a little kid want to get up and actually move around and be a little fidgety? Because little kids are fidgety.
Right.
So I don't know. Part of me is like, to bring it back to the church, I kind of like that they're saying, hey, bring your kids to church. We'll deal with whatever happens here, right? We're not going to yell at you or banish you from the church because your child said something while the pastor's saying something, just that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So part of me likes that, especially juxtaposition. A lot of parents feel like they can't take their kids places because, God forbid their child says something or, speaks a little bit louder than the rest of the adults in the room. They're kids. That's what they do.
Yeah.
Can I say something before you say it? Because I want to kind of so I don't sound like I have tried to have the family from Sound of Music. That's not what when I'm talking about walking, because you made some great points there, and I realized I'm like, oh, maybe I came off and sounded. You know what it really is? It's about the effort, and the lady on the plane is exactly it is. It's the effort. It's like when you go out to eat with your friends, and maybe you want to pay for them. Maybe they're in a bad spot. The fact that they at least say, whatever, I'll pay, that's all you care about. It's like, yeah, no, you good. I've got it. Not that they expected you to. And I think it's that kind of mindset too of families going in there. Cause we've traveled with kids. My kids are not perfect and they make noise, but can you at least show that you're trying to make some effort to help these kids along rather than the unruly of, hey, become what may, we're just out here. Maybe that's my part of it. And maybe that's just my oversensitivity to it. But anyway, sorry. I just wanted to make sure you don't think I'm like Mr. Nazi here.
No, I didn't think that at all.
Oh, that's too bad.
Now, here's the interesting thing. And I want to touch upon it in a few minutes here is I feel like we may be gravitating toward an anti-child society, right? Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that our kids should just run rampant yelling and screaming. And I was actually going to mention a story where like I've seen parents out like in Starbucks or heard stories where the parents like sitting there reading and the kid is just wailing, just going bananas. And the parents just like, just reading. And it's like, maybe attempt, because I feel like when you attempt to say, hey, calm down. It's okay. Here's your bottle or whatever, here's your book or whatever, whatever age they are and whatever you're trying to give them to kind of calm them down a little bit. I think that goes a long way. But you're right, Adam. It's like, what precipitated this? Why? And I'm just like, I'm reminded of when I attend church now. I've got my exploratory committee with church. But I used to be very active in the church when I was in my 20s, and I worked with kids from the wrong side of the track. These are teenagers. These are the kids that they knew all of the officers on the police force by name. Okay, that's the kind of kids that we're dealing with. And we had families there that left because they were there. And these weren't even like little kids that were just yelling and screaming. It's not like they were coming into the church service and yelling and screaming and acting bananas, but they did bring some of their poor behavior into the church because they were from the bad part of town where a lot of them literally live this way all day, every day. They use profanities. And I remember we were in a leadership meeting, and I was sitting in the back, and a woman in front of me, she was like, Well, by the time they're 15, shouldn't they just know how to behave in church? And I was like back there, like shaking my head. No, I was like, I mean, if you've been raised in church and you had parents that said this behavior is not appropriate, then yes, you would know that. But there's no such thing as just know. I think they took it for granted that their kids were behaved because they raised them to, to mind certain behaviors in certain places, right? I mean, and I'm sure that all of us do the same thing. My son is 7. I, he's a Florida boy for sure, because like if I let him, he would wear a tank top, flip flops, and gym shorts everywhere. Right. But I'm like, sometimes I'm like, no, that is not appropriate. We're going to church or we're going here. You go put something else on,
Right.
And so I guide him in this. But if a kid hasn't been guided, then they're not going to. And we actually had church members that would leave, and the pastor came and told me, he was like, yeah, we lost some members because of these kids. He was okay with it. And he knew that I was doing my best to try to corral them. But there's only so much that you can do when you're a youth director. Like you only get so much cooperation out of them, I guess. But I feel like today it's a little different, because you just keep hearing these stories about, oh, I want a child-free wedding, or I want restaurants that, don't allow children, which, like, if it's your wedding, I get it. But it's also kind of weird because you're inviting people to an event that establishes a family, which families generally have children involved in them, not always, but generally speaking. So it just feels like we're entering into that world. I mean, do you guys see that? Or am I crazy?
You're not crazy. We do have a segment where I think they're anti-child because they're mostly selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Because with children, you have to sacrifice.
Right.
Like whether they're your kids or someone else's kids, you have to sacrifice. You have to watch them. If your sister brings her kids over, you have to feed them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sure they're not getting into stuff. So you have to sacrifice your time, attention, and all these different things. And it's because they can't take care of themselves. So when someone says, don't bring your kid to my wedding, well, why? Well, it's because, then they'll take all the attention off of me, the bride,
Mm-hmm.
and put it onto the kid because he needs to use the bathroom, or he blurts out something, right? At the wrong moment. This is supposed to be my perfect moment. But it's all about you. And, I get it if it's adult-oriented stuff because it's not appropriate for kids.
Right.
That's something completely different. But if you're inviting families, right? These are family events. The weddings are supposed to be about families coming together. And to me, that would be a massive red flag if my wife was like, yeah, but no kids allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah,
so what's next? Like
Right.
My cousins can't come over, my nieces and nephews can't come over to the house because they're going to be too much of a disruption for you. Like, so to me, that's a subtle red flag about that particular future relationship.
Right. And, the other thing is, I live in a neighborhood, and I think I saw Matt Walsh mention this. He was like, oh, he posted this picture of this like idyllic 1990s, circa type picture of a kid on a bicycle, riding at dusk. And he's like, you can't have this anymore. And I was like, I don't know. See that in my neighborhood. I mean, there's different groups of kids. We got about 350 homes in our neighborhood. And there are, 4 or 5 different groups of kids of different ages that I see really periodically, sometimes out as late as like a whole 9 o'clock or something like that. It's really late for somebody like me getting up at 5, being an old man and all. But, like I hear them sometimes outside running around and screaming. I see them through the daytime, walking around or running around or doing their thing, riding their bicycle, walking their dog, whatever. And for me, I guess I look at it and I say, that is the mark of a good neighborhood, right? Like when I go to like, I guess I know I said that I'm not super into church. My wife is Catholic, so I'll attend Catholic mass with her. But then I'm also checking out the Presbyterians right now. And both of them are extremely welcoming to children, right? And the one I actually remarked on this probably last year, maybe even earlier than that, at Catholic mass. I was just sitting there and I just noticed that there were just kids randomly making noises. Some of them would be a little crying. Some of them would be talking a little bit loud, whatever, maybe a little laughter or something like that. And I didn't think it was overbearing. And I just was like, this is a nice church, actually, at least on that front, right? And I'm not talking about theology and all that, but just in the sense of it feels welcoming. I feel like you said, I can bring my kid here, and my kid goes most places that I go. So, or he might go with my wife, but one of the two or both of us, if we're both going somewhere, like even the Libertarian Party events where I went here in Florida, I've drugged my kid to because there's nowhere else for him to go, so I drag him along. And so for me, I think when I start hearing no kids, unless it's something that's geared toward adults, I think it's just always a red flag for me. And I don't want to be around it.
Could it be, and I'm totally on board with both of what you're saying there. And I think it's good to take your kids when they're young, take them out to restaurants. They get acclimated. They learn how to behave. Hopefully you learn how to behave with them too. And then you can, but think about this too. I mean, we've got people out there that don't want kids, at their wedding or whatever. Now, my wife and I would have had trouble because we were both from broken marriages, had kids, and got married, and our kids were at our wedding. So, and in it, that would have been somewhat difficult. But think about too, though, you've got, how you described your neighborhood. That's ours. I mean, I get detested. Neighbor house down the street. Maybe you guys are like this. Their kids are going to play in the street, so they have a little sign out there, and it's like slow kids playing. And they're yelling at cars. And I'm like, we live in a court, but around that's a main road. Why are you having your kids play in the street? They're going to get by cars. So I get annoyed by that, but I have our kids free reign. It's all of that out there. But what about those parents that are like the ones that put those signs up? Instead of teaching your kids how to watch out for danger, they want all the danger to watch out for your kids. Those are the kind of parents, maybe you don't want them bringing their kids to the wedding because they're in a way overshadowing everything. And I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here how some kids and how some parents are. There's so much of a problem, I think, like, overdoing it with their kids. Their kids maybe they're not reining them in. And then you're having them, and it's like, this is that couple, Jim and, they come to our programs, they come to our stuff, and they can't control their kids. It's going to ruin everything. I mean, there's that kind of stuff out there too. I don't know if that really is the case, but I think more along the lines of not having families or expecting that they can behave might be the more selfish aspect of this course.
Right. I guess I'm in the middle when it comes to signs, like you mentioned. I've seen them in our neighborhood, and I've actually thought about getting them because
I run them down on my bike.
Well, bicyclists are always like that, right?
Oh, okay.
I had the right of way. No, I'm a cyclist, folks, so I can joke about us and whatever.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, so here's the reason why I see cars going now. The way that our neighborhood is situated, where I live specifically, I am far enough away from the main road where playing in the street, depending on what it is, like playing ball or, riding your bicycle or something like that, playing on your skateboard, wouldn't be, it would be appropriate where I am, right? But even when there's no kids, we see people going by way too fast, and all the neighbors have complained about it because we got a lot of people that walk their dogs, that just walk in general. So we've got a lot of activity in the streets in general, and every neighbor knows it. And yet we still have some neighbors that are just going way too fast. I've almost, I've been walking my dog and had cars come too close to me. So
did you have a sign on you?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I probably should have. And the one day that it really caught me, I was out working in my garage, and my son and his friend were playing in the yard, and they were well within our yard. So they were very far from the street, and they were both like 5 at the time. And this car just goes flying down the road. And I was like, man, what if those boys had made a foolish mistake and the ball went out in the street, the very, very typical one. They go out to catch it, and then, a bad situation occurs, and it made me very angry because I was like, dude, slow down. This is a damn neighborhood, and you presumably live here, or you've at least been here once or twice. So you kind of have a gist that there are. So I've thought about it.
Would that sign slow that guy down though? And that's my
I don't
point,
know, but
which is if you teach your kids that there's danger out there, that they are going to, because you're not going to be with them all the time. What if they're going to go down to the store and they're on their bike, right? They need to be situational awareness. I don't know why this is such a problem with me, but it is.
No, I get it. And when my son, like he's 7 and he gets to go down so we live on a corner and it's a two-way stop. And he goes past the corner and he goes down about a half a block and there's a cul-de-sac. And then his friends, that's where he goes over there and plays all the time. And so I will watch him and double check and make sure that he's, looking both ways and all that stuff and, navigating the street like he's supposed to. And I'll just kind of watch him go down. But if a car goes down fast and, even if he's situationally aware, it may be too fast for him to respond accordingly if a mistake happens, like if he veers off a little bit too much or something like that. So it does kind of bother me. And I just kind of feel like if I put a sign out that I know it doesn't legally justify me, but it justifies me throwing a rock at their window if I catch them, which I would be willing to do because I'm like, and we're not talking like they're going 26 miles an hour. We're talking like they're going like 30, 35 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone, So I'm like, you need to slow down. Like there are so many people in our neighborhood that I feel like there's no excuse for it. So, but I do agree with you. Situational awareness is very important, and I teach that to my son. I'm like,
I'd rather you throw the sign at them.
Right. Well, that too, maybe, but I don't think I could. I'm not very big, so I don't think I could throw it as far. A rock, I can't throw a rock that far either because I was never good at baseball. But it's my better opportunity.
Sorry to derail the conversation.
All good. No,
slow children play signs.
But no, and I agree that like we don't want to create a society, I don't think, where it revolves so heavily around children that we don't teach children how to navigate the world. Yeah. Right. There are dangers out there that, they'll face in one way or another, maybe, and we want them to be prepared. And I jokingly tell my son this, but I actually mean it. I say, son, how are you going to grow up and be Batman if you're not being mindful of your surroundings? It's somewhat joking, but I'm also very serious about it. I'm like, you have to pay attention, look around, see what's going on, be mindful of your surroundings. But at the same time, I think adults should too.
Well, if you're sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say this entire conversation is about balance. And you're absolutely right, Tyler. Like we can't expect the world to shapeshift around our kids because that's impossible. But what we can do is do the thing we have control over, which is teach our children the best that we can. What I would say, like adult lessons in child size, right? Just like incremental adult lessons to children. Like you said, being aware of your surroundings, things that a lot of adults take for granted, kids don't know, right? So I feel like we forget that children don't know stuff until someone teaches them. And this expectation of behavior or information, culture, mannerisms, all these different things, they have to be taught. Otherwise, they're just going to try to figure out the best that they can. Or maybe if they're lucky, they just mimic the right people just because their nature is to mimic people. Everything is about a sort of balance. So yes, we don't want a hyper child-centric society that puts rubber on every edge that exists, and kids can't go anywhere at any time by themselves and just completely safe, which in some ways we've gone in that direction. But we also don't want to treat children like crap and say that they're a complete nuisance, have them nowhere. As a matter of fact, the only places they can go if it's designated for children. So Disneyland, and that's it. Right. We want to find some sort of balance between the two.
I don't know about you guys, but I grew up with doing a lot with my parents. We had 3 kids, but they were always doing stuff with other couples, and I enjoyed sitting there listening to stories or conversations. My dad and his friends. It was a fun thing. But talking about balance, it even goes with your marriage. So, as a divorce attorney, I see this. Kids are out of the picture, and now what do these parents have? they focused on their kids too much, and they haven't had a relationship. So, we blend our family, and it's like the kids are important, but we have this relationship. So, and is it a hierarchy? To some extent, your relationship with your spouse is just different. And if you elevate your kids to that same level, I mean, it's even balance within this conversation of this little issue I'm bringing up. But to that level, then you have nothing. You don't have this relationship, and you don't understand. And the kids need to understand this, mom and dad time. And I think, at least for me, it's been really beneficial having this kind of relationship, kind of this understanding coming into it. And our kids are, leaving the nest, and it's enjoyable because we have this great relationship. So that's just some advice, I guess, going forward too.
Right. No, I agree with that, because like sometimes my son will come in and my wife and I are talking, and he'll just, as little kids do, they come in and they're like, "Hey mom," blah, 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 and you're like, whoa, hold up. Mommy or daddy is telling a story. You're going to have to wait your turn. Right. And I do think that there are a lot of people that kind of, I can't remember how you said it, Adam, but this child-centric world. And I don't know how you guys believe, but there's a lot of people out there that will say, like, your kids are the number one in your house. And I'm like, no, my spouse is. And then my kids are after that, because like Tyler pointed out, one day the kids will be gone and then I will have the spouse. So if my kid was number one, then basically I've got leftovers when they leave is kind of how I see it. Not to mention, we're the adults. We're the ones that are supposed to be, kind of giving them direction. And how am I giving them direction if I said, you rate higher than your mom, or mom says you rate higher than dad? Like, that to me doesn't say give them direction. That says you put them on a pedestal that's not appropriate. So I agree with you on that sense. Adam?
It's interesting, like the idea of who ranks what. And I don't know, that's kind of like, let's say you have a good relationship with both of your parents. It's like saying, who's more important, your mom or dad? It's kind of a unfair prioritization. Both are equally important for different reasons, right? Your children have a priority because they can't take care of themselves, right? But obviously your relationship has a priority, because if your relationship fails, then you guys are getting divorced and household splitting up, and then it affects your kids, right? But also, if you're not taking care of your kids, it's a sign that probably your relationship isn't good either, and you don't want to be a terrible parent, right? So they're both equally important for different reasons. And so I don't necessarily see it as a hierarchy.
Okay.
I see that they're both important for different reasons. Like I said, it would be like picking your mom or dad, or who's your favorite child. Like, it's kind of a unfair situation for someone to, because here's what happens when you tell people one holds a priority over the other, then that's how they start treating things. So then they start disregarding one over the other, and maybe they do it in the wrong sense or in the wrong time, right? Rather than just saying, in this situation, this is important, right? In this situation, my child really needs me, right? This is important. But in this situation, the kids can wait because my wife really needs me, right? So life is situational. So I don't know. That's just, maybe I'm nitpicking, but that's just me personally.
Gotcha. Where are you with all that, Tyler?
No, I mean, exactly. It's a different relationship. And maybe that's kind of the mix you see. Like, oh, my mom or my kid is my best friend. Okay, well, sorry, but if they're normal, they need their own best friends. You're your parent. And at some point, you do become friends, right? Yeah. I mean, my 25-year-old son, he's telling me gun stuff. I mean, it's just, it's a friend relationship, but there's still always that parental, advice and stuff you have in there. So the problem you can't have, though, is if it's a same situational, priority, right? And that you're prioritizing your children over your spouse, and that's what I've seen. It's like, if push comes to shove, you're like taking the child's needs over yours, which children are manipulative, and maybe your spouse is too. So, I mean, Adam, you are completely right. And I would also say I would not voice these opinions to my children. I may voice them to my wife of like how we structure things, but the kids aren't being told, I care for mom more than you. I mean, we're just not going down
That's
that
not
route.
what I was trying to say.
No.
Either, hopefully, you guys.
No. But well, Adam said it. He goes, you know, if you're voicing it, now they are treating you. And I'm like, yeah, no offense. I'm just not telling the kids all these details.
Right.
Maybe the dogs, maybe I'll have the dogs up there with them as well. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No. And
I'll clarify.
Go ahead.
I didn't listen. So that was my fault. What I meant was like we're on a podcast. So that's what I'm saying. Like we give different ideas and someone takes what we're saying as being literal 100% of the time.
Oh, yeah.
You put this person ahead and literal 100%, you put this person ahead. So that's what, not necessarily we're going to our 5-year-olds. Sorry, mommy's more important than you. Like,
right. Yeah. No,
I mean, the idea is if they're both in the water and you need to save one, you can't make that decision like, oh, I'm picking this child over my spouse. I mean, that would be a horrible scenario. I don't even know what the heck would happen there, but you're probably your child because it's, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would, in that scenario, I would say you're picking the child because that's the weaker one of the two. But it's also possible that there's a circumstance where you're like, I got to grab the wife first or whatever. And I don't mean to give off the child is like, I'm not trying to suggest that the child just simply doesn't rank and everything is all about the wife. I'm just saying when I look at the relationship dynamic in the house, my wife and I got together first. Then we had a child. Eventually the child will leave. So I need to make sure that the wife and I are kind of like balanced on the same level and that the child recognizes that they are subordinate to both of us and that we are on the same team. But at the same time, we're also a family unit. And there are times like sometimes we will say, like my wife might tell me, or she might say, or I might say her, hey, hold on, he's got something to say. He's want to tell us a story. And so then we make sure that we give him his time to tell a story because he is important. He is an important part of the family. I'm just, and it's funny, years ago when I was like a little kid, we watched like, I don't know, some Oprah show and they were talking about friends, parents who are their kids' friends. And I asked my mom after, I was like, Mom, are we friends? And she was very clear. She said, no, I'm your mother. That was the end of that.
That's, I guess the way you described it reminds me of a hierarchy. And I think that's different than priority. So let's say there's your boss, and then there's the team of people who are underneath your boss, right? Who's more important? Well, they're all important for different reasons.
Right.
But one person leads, right? Their position is to be the leader. And so if the leader is successful, then everyone is successful.
Right.
If the leader is terrible, then everyone fails, right? So I'm all for a hierarchy as far as responsibility goes and things like that. And so, yes, in the case of a hierarchy, no, the child does not get to tell me what to do.
Right.
Because you can't be responsible for yourself, hence why I'm your parent, right? So there's a hierarchy in that sense. And I'm all for that. Actually, I'm 1000% for that.
And you've probably seen families that don't operate with that, where kids are telling their parents like what to do.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
Kids resent their parents. I remember watching a Dr. Phil episode, and it was a very dysfunctional family. Like the father is drinking and partying with her friends and sleeping with some of her friends. And he's a complete mess. The wife is a complete pushover and just like, and so Dr. Phil is looking at this mess. And now the daughter is a young adult at the time. I think she was like 20, 21. And this might not be verbatim, but it was basically what she was insinuating, that she grew up and they never taught her how to do stuff and they never told her no. And it was almost to the sense like they didn't love her enough to tell her no. Right. And I think that really matters. Kids resent their parents when they just let them run their own lives.
Yes.
And never give them any direction. And especially because if you're set to run your own life as an adult, most adults, I should say, you accept if you mess up, right? Because that's your fault, right? And you realize where you mess up. You hopefully your brain's fully developed, and you can kind of figure out where you messed up and how you can fix it, and so on and so forth. When you're a child, and someone is giving you the responsibility at the age of 14 to dictate your life and make all the decisions and give you no guidance, and you screw up, you feel like you just destroyed your entire life because you have no experience. You have no frame of reference. You have no guidance.
Right.
So then when you do grow up, let's say that 14-year-old becomes 24, right? And you're a little bit wiser, you become very resentful and angry that your parents let you just wander the earth, making mistakes left and right, and never showed you how to do stuff.
Right.
And so why didn't they show you? Is because, well, they were too preoccupied with whatever they got going on, or they just didn't care enough to correct you. Why would you let your kid run in the middle of the highway? Mm-hmm. Well, you must not have loved me enough to stop me.
Yeah. It's interesting because you say, hey, and I agree with you. You say, hey, when you grow up, you get to be 25 and you look back and you're like, wow, my parents didn't love me. It can actually happen even earlier. I will never forget this. I was like in 6th or maybe 7th grade. And I was walking home, like all the kids would walk home down this same major road that the school was on. And I was walking and talking with some girl that was in a different class or whatever. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but I'll never forget this. She said, I think she had a single mother. And she said, I know my mom doesn't love me because she lets me do whatever I want. And I have never forgotten that. That just stands out because, like, imagine being 6th or 7th grade and already having figured out that your parent doesn't love you enough to put in guardrails or barriers or say, no, that's not appropriate or whatever. That just that you recognize doing whatever you want is actually not good. Because, like, I don't know. I feel like in 6th or 7th grade, you really shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't have that kind of thought pattern going on. Like, you're supposed to be hanging out with friends and discovering boys and girls or whatever. I don't know.
Kids at that age are saying, you don't love me because you won't let me do X, Y, and Z. And this girl probably had something go wrong that her mom said, whatever. And I feel like I need to bring up Ricky Lake or Sally Jesse or Montel because you guys have mentioned Dr. Phil and Oprah. So I was watching Ricky Lake. No, I don't have it.
Ricky Lake. I was all for it.
Yeah. Man, that's a blast from the past. That's funny. Hey, real quick, I want to throw this comment out there because this was related to earlier. Parn says, I feel like you picked the child. This is going back to, if your child and your wife are both in, drowning or whatever. Because if you don't, your wife will never forgive you anyway.
Right.
Which is probably pretty good. Like, imagine if you pick the wife and then you have to live with the fact that you picked her and not the child. And that's probably not going to go well for you. So let me ask you guys this really tough question here. So we were talking about, the topic of tonight is like, should children be in public spaces? And the concern is that maybe some parents are just letting their kid be too unruly. And maybe it's going too far where the kid is like screaming and throwing things around. And we've all probably seen that in a restaurant where you're like, okay, that's a little too far. Do you think that maybe this feeling that society is going toward this anti-child attitude, do you think that's related in any way to the fatherlessness problem in America? Because I think there is one. Or maybe you don't think there is one. I don't know. But do you think there's any relationship whatsoever?
I'll let Tyler go first.
Could be. I mean, I had a father. I've been an active father, but I could see that where, a father is. We've talked about this with spanking, where my mom would spank me. My dad, 6'3", never. I mean, my mom would say, when your dad gets home, you're gonna get a whooping, and I would be scared shitless. And I can't ever think of a time where he spanked me. He just had that authority, right?
Right.
And my dad's super easygoing. So I mean, it would all depend. We've seen the father out there too, who's basically whipped by the wife. She's in control, but there's still a 2-person dynamic, right? So I don't know. I can't really speak because I haven't had that kind of family necessarily. But we've all seen it. I don't want to get past the idea that take your kids, be there. Because when you're young kids, I mean, and you've seen this happen where they're unruly. Do you blame the parent? Or I mean, me personally, if you talk about it later, it's not that the kid's really kids could all be the problem, but at least my interpretation, it always goes back to the parent. So,
I generally look at the parent. Adam?
Yeah. So I'll go off of what he said. Yes, 100% of the time I look at the parents, because I'll go use the boss analogy. The reason why, or let's look at sports as a sport analogy. They fire the manager. They don't sell all the players, right? They hold the manager. He's the authority figure, and you're supposed to lead our team to success, and you failed. So you know what? You're fired. We'll put somebody else in because you failed at your job. So we are supposed to, as parents, lead our children. We're supposed to teach them, right? We're supposed to go through all these different things. So if a child, not saying that a child could never be loud or anything like that, or have a moment, right? And I don't, if I'm in some random restaurant, I don't know these kids, I'm not necessarily judging the parent at that moment, because I don't know their history.
Yeah. Right.
Now, I can in some circumstances, but most of the time, I'm not necessarily judging the parent. But I will say, if it's someone that I know and I see repeatedly, then I am 1000% judging the parent.
Right.
Because at some point, you got to get up off your ass and do something. You have to say something. You have to correct. We talked about before, discipleship is to teach, right? You're supposed to teach your children how to behave, right? You're supposed to teach them how to move about this world. So that, just backing up what Tyler was saying, to answer your question, is this linked to fatherlessness? It can be under circumstance, because discipline is incredibly important. Discipline from a man, as he stated, from his father, is very different than discipline from a woman.
Right.
And especially
the boys.
Yes, I was about to say, yeah. Especially when you have a dynamic where the mother becomes the disciplinarian on the boys, it's very different, because not saying that girls don't get hit, but the women don't know how to exert the type of discipline that a young boy needs in a healthy way. I would say 9 times out of 10.
Right.
And there are some things that are just innate, right? All I have to do is show up at my son when he was younger, and like, don't you ever do that again. And he didn't.
Right.
That was it. Right. But I've seen environments where they're just beating the crap out of kids left and right. And I'm like, clearly it's not working.
Right.
Right.
And that's where I was going. I'll get to that in a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah. So clearly it's not working. And yes, or in some cases, they just don't even try because for whatever reason. So these kids grow up, 2 big things. They don't get disciplined, so they don't know where the guardrails are in society, right? They don't get disciplined at home. So then they go out in the world, and then they get disciplined by the law or something to that effect. But the other part is I lost my train of thought for a second. They're not getting the discipline, and the hell, I forgot the second point I was going to make.
Think about it, and let me just ask you a question though about the coaches. I mean, and I think it's a great analogy and dynamic though. But you think of like coaches getting fired because the players are running the asylum, right? And maybe they're getting fired because they can't control it. But I mean, are you firing someone that's with Michael Jordan's if he doesn't want you in as a coach anymore, or LeBron? I mean, I don't know if the coaches really have much say at all. And sometimes that's just me. The analogy might be to push back would be like, yeah, but maybe they're paid so much. They're like the kids running the household.
Well, in the sense of a sport analogy, there's people who are above the manager, right? And so they're always going to look, honestly, in most sports, the manager is a scapegoat, no matter what.
Maybe take it out of the professional and where the kids aren't so important.
Yeah. But hopefully, if we were to stick with that analogy, hopefully the president of the organization or the CEO of the organization isn't being ruled by the kids, and so to speak, being ruled by the players, because that's not how you run an organization. If you were to lead, you are to make decisions based off of your leadership. But when you start listening to people who are just highly emotional, they have one particular job, they run and catch something, right? Trying to tell you how to run an entire organization, like that's not a good look. So I would hope that most organizations aren't run that way, but organizations are run by people, and people are flawed.
Right.
I forgot the second point. So
that's all right. So
I was hoping you'd come back to it.
Let me tell you why I asked that question, because I know when we think of dads, we all, and you guys, I'm not picking on you, but we tend to go there like, oh, we need the dad in there because dad's a disciplinarian. He walks in, he just got to look at the kid. He gives him that black snake moan with the picture where he's like, kind of like staring down the kid, whatever. And but here's what I've noticed. Sometimes, because Tyler mentioned, he goes like, 2-parent homes, even maybe a slightly dysfunctional one, is still a 2-parent home, and there's still some level of benefit there, unless it's too out of line. Sometimes my wife will come to me and she'll say, do you remember that, don't forget that he's like 7, or that, this thing he's really sensitive about this, or something like that. And she'll try to remind me of something. And then sometimes I'll tell her, I'm like, hey, he needs, this, he needs a little bit of structure, or, a little bit of discipline, because he's a boy, and blah, blah, blah. And so we balance each other out. And I think what that ends up doing is that creates the structure by, because if it was just me, well, clearly I can sometimes be too harsh, and sometimes my wife, both of us can be too harsh, and both of us can be too gentle sometimes. But typically speaking, the woman is a little bit more soft, the man is a little bit more tough, right? More typically speaking. And so I look at it and I say, with both of those, that helps create the expectation overall in many different aspects, right? And then it allows the parents to kind of work it out and say, what does our kids specifically need? Because my son is going to need, or he's going to need something different necessarily, not like rules per se, but like a different approach, a different way of handling him to guide him in the direction he needs to go than Tyler's did, than yours did, Adam. And so I think that the fatherless list is not even just discipline, but just the fact that you have two heads that are coming together and both looking at the same human individual differently, and then working out what their needs are. And so I think that's an underrepresented problem with fatherlessness, is that it's just simply two heads, and then they can work together if they're, they've got their act together. That's
a really good point. The most psychologists say the most important parent is the same-sex parent to a child. So, I'll speak from when I was a kid, not having my father around. I didn't have anyone to relate to about what I was going through. Not in the same way that my son has, by having me around. Mm-hmm. So if I messed up as a kid, I didn't have anyone who understood what it felt like to be a boy, to mess up, that I felt comfortable with confiding to. Mm-hmm. And I also didn't have a father figure who could pull it out of me, right? Because I see my son for many years. I would see he doesn't want to disappoint his father. So he doesn't want to say like, yeah, I didn't do this thing, or I'm struggling with this thing. But I can see it. I can read his demeanor. I can see that. So I would just keep talking to him, not berate him, just talking to him and say like, listen, man, if you got something, it's okay. You can talk to me about it. But just showing him that there's room for us to have that dialogue. And I think that was more of my son's struggle, was making sure that he felt comfortable talking about like those really tough things. Sort of a side note, the closest that my son has really opened up to me was actually when we went to his first trip out of the country was with me. We went to London, and then we went to the Madrid area. And we were walking around like because I have a friend who lives in like the suburbs around Madrid, and we were walking around this neighborhood. It was just me and him, no work, no school, no nothing, and we were just walking for a couple hours, few hours, I forget how long, and we were just talking because we had nothing else. We had nothing else to do, but we just able to talk. And he finally like told me some stuff that I was like, man, why didn't you just tell me about that? He's like, oh, I didn't want to like put that on you. But it was good that he at least told me that then, right? And so even though he told me some of those things a little bit too late, in my opinion, at least he was able to tell his father that. I didn't have that. Right. So I internalized everything as a kid as something is wrong with me rather than someone like, yeah, man, like we all go through breakups. They're like, oh yeah, so the girl doesn't like you. Not every girl's gonna like you. Right. Rather than like something is wrong with me. And that was a struggle that I had, and I carry that into my adult years. And it took me a long time to kind of get over that aspect of constantly looking that there's something wrong with me rather than that there is something normal. So I guess I say all that to say that that same-sex parent is really, really important.
Yes.
Girls don't necessarily have this issue in our society because the separation usually involves the father not being there, the father being pulled away, or whatever the circumstance is, and the children are by default supposed to be with moms. So the girls have a mother figure, whether she's flawed or not, she at least has a mother figure.
Right.
The boys that's the area where they're trying to figure out who the hell are they.
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember reading a book. I want to say it was either Wild at Heart or Healing the Masculine Soul. I can't remember which one it was. It was one of the two. I want to say it was probably the latter. But there were two stories, and I think they both came out of the same book. And one dealt with boys, one dealt with girls. And they were just stories. And the writer was saying, one day the son was in his room playing with his cars, and he's like crashing them, and he's being loud. And he's just, And the mother was like, I need to go and tell him to cool it. And the husband was like, hold up. And he said, no, he needs to do this. Like it. And I think you're right. There is a certain level of men understand what boys need. Like we know, hey, yeah, he's crashing his cars and maybe he's going to scratch him up. Maybe he'll dent him. Maybe he'll smash his Tonka trucks that mom and daddy paid a whole bunch of money for, and she'll be pissed about it. Wait a minute, that did happen to me. But that was probably too far. But don't let your kids totally destroy your cars. But like they need to be physically aggressive in some way, a little bit, right? And so I think that's good. And then and this deals with girls, but it also deals with the father as well. So it's kind of like the same. It's kind of like opposite sex. And I don't have a girl, but this is the most interesting to me that I've just ever read. The mom was making a girl a dress, brand new pretty dress, sewed her up a dress and all that good stuff. And they get it all complete. The girl puts it on, and the mom's like, "Yeah, you look really pretty." And the girl's like, "Yeah, I really look pretty." And then they both look at each other, and they're like, "Let's go ask daddy." Right. And then they go rushing to get like that final confirmation. So I think I agree with you that fathers are important. I think the same sex is also important as well. And then I think there's also that dynamic of two heads coming together to work out, because I know for my own self, I have simply made some mistakes. I've misjudged some things, and I'm glad that my wife was being observant and could pull me aside later and be like, yeah, do you realize, or here's a different way to approach that, or maybe you didn't understand what what he was upset about, or whatever the case is. So I think there's a huge dynamic there, and I believe that fatherlessness is probably contributing. I don't want to say it's the main factor, but I would say it's probably contributing to this, what it feels like a wave of people that just don't want kids in spaces. And I don't get that, because I like, not to sound creepy, but I like when I go to church and I hear kids. I like when I hear the kids running around outside. It just makes me feel like I'm in a good place. So
I went to church this weekend, and there were some kids, making some noise. but there were adults that would just, with no kids, that were making more noise than the children. So, we can't always just put it on kids. And I think that's an easy thing to just, hey, there's a bike on the road, they're the problem. Maybe.
Right. Right.
But I appreciate you bringing it back to, because I brought up discipline, which is the first thing that goes to, but there's so much more that plays into there. And you guys both mentioned that. And like, my father, I would talk to him about some things, but my mom, it almost enables you when you have a father that has this, you have this communication with, that then these other things that maybe you're internalizing, that you're just going to talk to your mom about. I talk to my mom, girls crush my heart or whatever it is. That's kind of who I would talk about. But my dad and I, the constant conversations about sports and other things. And so, it's all dynamics. And when you have them both there, my kids coming to me completely different for different reasons. And then, kids to their mom for different reasons. It's a wonderful thing. Yeah, that's all I have.
So speaking of church, I made this snarky comment. I said, and I just read it. I said, "Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, unless they are too noisy for adults who rarely can recall what the sermon was even about at the restaurant after worship service." Mark 10:14, updated for modernity. Because I was like, back from my days, I remember it was kind of like a running joke. Like, did you even remember the sermon? Like, were you paying attention? And I'm like, if I can understand maybe a restaurant a little bit more, because people are actively engaging with each other for the purpose of what they're supposed to be doing there, eating, enjoying time with other people. So I can understand when they might be upset. But if there's a large number of people that are going to like churches or other places, and then they walk away, and then you find out that they really didn't enjoy the space as intended, then it really doesn't make sense to me to get kind of gripey about, I'm sure gripey is a word, gripey about having kids there, right? And so it seems weird to me, but I guess at the end of the day, I just fall in the, maybe it's because I'm a dad, I'm a new dad. I'm got 7 whole years in, and I'm just a little more sympathetic to kids.
Maybe taking it back to the original, post that the Mount Washington Church had is, there's nothing wrong with the church kind of like putting out there, look, we're about young kids. We're about, young families. This is the place for you. You're going to be welcome. You're going to be understood. And maybe, an older church with, a bunch of, blue hairs, maybe that's not the place for them. And it's perfectly fine to, in a sense, advertise for all this. Doesn't give parents excuses for not being parents of their kids in public places.
Right. Yeah. And I don't want to ever suggest that, like, make sure your kids, well, I think we talked about it earlier. I think kids tend to behave better if they've been around a lot of adults, because they observe and they watch and they see what other adults are doing. Our son has done that because we just I've been working from, he was born in 2019. I started working from home in 2020, and I've been working from home ever since. My wife's a real estate agent, so she basically works at home unless she's out showing houses. So we've basically been in the house, and when we don't put him in daycare, so he goes with us when he's around, or he stays with grandma, but he's with adults a lot. And I think that contributed to why people rave about his, behavior and his mannerism, how polite he is. And he's generally a pretty good kid. And I think that's part of it, is he saw how adults behaved, and he was like, all right, that's the way that you behave when you come here and you do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think kids need to make sure that they're around adults, and also consume. We throw around adult as being like perverted and stuff like that. I mean, like adult shows in regards to like a sitcom or things like that, because I always hated this when they were young. I hate the Disney Channel. I absolutely despise the Disney Channel because they do stuff like painting the adults as idiots, and the kids are always rude, and the adults are just like, they're just goofy and idiotic. And why would you listen to these people? And the kids were always the smartest people in the room, and I just never liked that as an example.
Right.
I think it gives the wrong lesson. Now, maybe not every kid takes something from it and they can just separate, like, oh, it's a TV show. But, media sends messages. Some things are subliminal. And and we just take it in different ways, and kids take it in different ways. And I wouldn't be shocked if some kid is just watching whatever Disney show and they call their dad a goofball, and then they come around the corner and call their dad a goofball. Like, what the hell did you call me?
Right.
Well, right. Like, where'd you learn that from?
It's like the 90s shows, right? Like they were fun and we watched them and we laughed, but they always made the husband out to be a goofball, like actually a goofball, like Home Improvement and those other ones. Like they were well-meaning dads that just didn't seem to quite have it together, like together enough, but they really needed the mom there in order for the family to properly function.
That's why I watch, and I'm going to bring this back to something you were saying earlier. That's why I watched Married with Children. Al Bundy, look, because we talked about families fighting within and whatever, but it's still a team. And so when this is what the Bundys did. They didn't like each other, right? They're a horrible family. But when they got attacked from outside, they coalesced as a unit against everybody else. And sometimes that's, you talked about hierarchy, all that little stuff. It comes together and you've got this fighting unit. I think that's an important thing. I don't know why I brought Married with Children up, but maybe don't watch that with your parents or if you have young kids. So
Probably not.
That's what I watched though.
So, I remember watching that, but and that was funny. And Adam is probably correct. We probably all watched those shows growing up and picked up, on some ideas and we didn't realize it. And then perhaps when we got older, we had to unlearn them. Maybe we're still unlearning them. I don't really know. I haven't really sat down and thought about what the lessons are.
Actually, can I give you an example?
Yeah.
So to kind of bring it back to Disney, but let's go back to like Disney movies, let's not these because they're all perverted these days, but like the ones from, when we were younger, they were always, and on the surface.
How young are you? Nice. How old are you? Because I was watching Kurt Russell as a kid on Disney movies, computer wore tennis shoes, that kind of
stuff. I'm 41.
Okay.
Yeah. So
he's a young fella.
Yeah, relatively. So when you go back, you see all these Disney princesses and fairy tales, but for girls, they gave a depiction of love that is unrealistic. And you think like, oh, that's just for kids. But I see that carry over into how they expect life to be, especially on their wedding day. Right? It's supposed to be this big magical moment. It's like the climax. They just build it all the way up. And then after the wedding, there's nothing different. Like it's the same as the day before. Right. And they have this disappointment. Now they're bored. Now they don't like, I thought it was supposed to feel different. Or why is our relationship different? I was like, well, actually that's normal, right? You're not doing the same things as you did on the second date when you've been together for 5 years. Right? But it just looks different. Doesn't mean that you don't love each other. It just looks different. And I think there are a group of women, and I say this in a loving way, have over the years, have many of female friends. And sometimes it's good that they have like a straight male friend who's not trying to have sex with them, talk to them, to tell them like, you're being unrealistic. Like that's not what guys think. That's not what we're trying to do. But they want like this constant fairy tale life. And they get this imagery from when they were little girls consuming this stuff, which on the surface sounds nice, but it's teaching them about relationships, right? And I think in some cases, either superseding what they're seeing at home, right? Because their parents, most parents are just modeling certain things, but they may not be talking about, here's how you know if this is good, if this is healthy. Here's how it feels like when you do get married, stuff like that. Or sometimes you get these damn parents who feed into it. Oh yeah, it's magical. Right. And then they get really disappointed when it doesn't feel that way. Like it feels good, but it's not supposed to be like this big orgasm of an event. It's a celebration.
There's time and place for that.
Yeah.
But like, it's a celebration, but life still goes on and you got to
Right.
pay your bills, pay taxes. The vast majority of your days are rather mundane. So you just want to spend time with someone that you actually like, even in the mundane, and that you don't need a vacation to like someone. You don't need something extravagant to like someone, to go out to a restaurant to feel a connection. Like that type of thing, I think it sets up a lot of women for disappointment because they have really high expectations as far as what relationships are supposed to look like.
Right. Yeah, and there seems to be a rash of that on the internet that I've seen. I don't know how true it is, it's the internet, but there seems to be like this group, these guys out there that are like complaining because they're like, oh, these women have these crazy high standards, and we'll never find love. The incel red pill type crowd, and then you seem to see these videos of women, and they're like, oh, a man's got to be like 6 foot tall and make six figures and whatever, all these crazy standards, and I'm like, where did you guys learn all of this? Like, it just, I feel like part of it maybe was growing up, like you guys are talking about, like watching some of these shows, but then maybe social media fed into it, like the whole swipe, whichever way, I never can remember because I never used it, but swipe left or right or whatever. And you could just like keep swiping. And I was like, back in my day, not to sound too old, but back in my day, you went to a bar or wherever, and if you swipe too many times, effectively, like 3, that was it. Like you had 3 options there, maybe 4, if you were lucky, and so you had to learn to compromise a little bit on your idea of somebody. And, maybe you wanted, I don't know, whatever. It's been so long, I can't even remember anymore. But I do remember, you would just go and you had who was in front of you, and either you tried to strike a conversation or you went home without a phone number or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And then these days it feels like everybody's just like swipe, 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 swipe. And they're like, oh, I need this and this and this and this and this. And it's like, where is this coming from? I don't know.
So that is, in my opinion, most of the time when I see women who are like that, either they had no father or a weak father. So either there's no father in the picture, or they had a father who spoiled the shit out of them, and they gave them a bad representation as to what a man is. So now they just see a man as a utility, right? It's no different than, hey, if I buy a car from your dealership, what are the perks that I'm going to get? All right, well, I'm just going to go to this other dealership because they give me better deals. Like, it's no different.
Right.
For those women, they see men as some sort of commodity. Like, what am I getting out of this? So that's when you really start seeing that. But that's why I think it's a manifestation of, they don't respect men. Like when we were talking about raising children, the different dynamics, how important these things are. If they had a healthy, not saying a perfect, but a relatively healthy father figure at home who they trusted and loved, he's their compass. And so he's the example. And so she wouldn't think of men as some source to get food. She would look at him like, my father acted this particular way, and I love my father. I want a man who is like my father. And my father is not some wallet. He's not some check, right? He's a man who acts a particular way. He provides, but he also cares, and he loves, and he does all these things. That's what I want.
Right.
So that's usually when I see that type of thing.
Gotcha. And he takes us to church even when we're loud.
That's right.
I would just chime in on that. It maybe has to do with when you. So I have 2 daughters, and they're not the types that are going to take because these women too. They take the whole week of work off because it's their birthday. And it's just like, oh, come on. I mean, that's someone also who falls in line with the wedding thing, exactly what you're talking about, because they're the number one. They're the number one. They treat themselves like that, and they expect everyone else to treat themselves like that too. So if you do have some sort of hierarchy in your family, and you have daughters, and you understand that the wife is kind of here, and it's just a way that you exude this authority over your children, that they can make mistakes and you can be in trouble for things you do. You don't just get away with everything.
Right.
That their mentality is just, and for me personally, it's like God-centric, where there's something greater than you, right? You're not the be all end all. Right. And you're very important in my life, and they all understand that, but there's something above, and even within our family. And so they go out there and they don't expect the world to bow down to them. They don't expect a slow child sign out in front of their yard, DL.
Right. Yeah. Hey, I just wanted as a warning that you know what I need? I need a slow child sign, or I may throw a rock at your damn window if you drive too fast.
There you go.
So it's really more about the rock at your window, because I just don't want you driving too fast down. You're a block away from your house. You don't need to go that fast. So I don't know.
Those signs always made me laugh, because I always thought they were trying to say that the children are slow.
Yeah, exactly.
Depends on how you read it.
Some of them do, in fairness, and we're not making fun of those.
There's no punctuation on there.
The ones that they like, deaf child, or whatever in the area. Like, we're not making fun of those. We're just making fun of the normal ones. Okay.
Right.
So by calling them normal. Anyway, so all right, gentlemen, I think that's a wrap for tonight. So any final words, gentlemen?
Tyler?
Just I want to give a shout out to Jerry Springer show, and the Jenny Jones show. I don't know.
For effing up a generation.
Yeah, that's right. So. People can follow me on Substack, adambcoleman.substack.com. And I'm working on a documentary I'm crowdfunding for. So if you want to donate, go to givesendgo.com/theillegalhighways.
Awesome. Send me those links. I'll put them in the show notes for you.
Thank you.
That way people don't have to try to remember.
Can you give a real short description of what that's about?
Absolutely. It's primarily focused on the victims of illegal immigrants who are driving semi-trucks. And so I'll be talking to, as of right now, I have a widow that I'll be talking to out in Colorado about her experience losing her husband. There's a guy who's deported 16 times, drove a truck. The pipes fell off after the truck jackknifed and crushed her husband to death. That's one type of victim. And then explaining like why the system is the way that it is. How did it get here? And it's not just a rogue guy just got behind the wheel. It's an entire system that supports it, and corporations that make lots of money off of it. Cough, cough, Amazon. So, so it's an entire situation of kind of recognizing, by making it like a human story, as to how this is negatively detrimental for American citizens, how this is a present danger that is far greater than people realize. And even for me, if you asked me 2 months ago, how's trucking? I'd be like, I'm sure it's fine. And I've been pushed down the rabbit hole by many of people in the industry to show that this is one of the most critical infrastructures. How trucking goes affects the price of goods and everything. And it is being overridden by illegal labor. Guys who are violating all different types, like we can go down the list, all different types of laws when it comes to trucking. All those regulations that we thought were good, they don't care about. And it's not all because of the single driver. It's the entire system that's at play. And many of those guys are indentured servants. So this is not a anti-foreigner, anything like that. I'm actually empathetic to these guys, because they are, I would say many of them, if not most of them, are set up in a way where they're indentured servants. They're driving trucks that they have to pay rent on. They live in their trucks. They drive 2 times as more than an American trucker would, because the American trucker is following regulations. Like, I think many of these crashes we're seeing is because they're literally crashing out. Like, they've been driving for so long, they're exhausted, and boom, they run into 14 cars and kill people.
Right.
So, that's is a little bit longer than what you were saying, but that's basically the sense of it. So I'm crowdfunding because a lot of it requires travel. It's in person. I'm sitting down with these people and talking to them, and also just showing like what it looks like on the like in real life and how we actually got here.
Gotcha.
Wow.
And this guy's like doing cool stuff. I'm like, I just got a podcast.
I just had to replace a window, and this is why I was almost late. Replace a window in my garage because I have a golf simulator in there, and I shanked one in through the window.
Oh man,
that's what I've got going on. But you sound like you're doing the Lord's work.
Dude,
so
yeah, doing some cool stuff. I'm gonna get off here. I'm gonna go and be like, talk to my wife and be like, I need to do something because like this Adam guy, he's like one up. I can't, as a man, I can't let that happen. But no, that sounds cool. I look forward to it. So I'll, get me those links and I'll put them in the show notes. By the way, gentlemen, somebody asked Adam, they said, hey, what's the CR on your shirt stand for? I think it's
this is for, I got it from Dad Save America. I forgot what the CR stand for. They're probably gonna kill me. Like, oh, it's probably in the back of my shirt. I forget. You know what it is? I'm the king of free T-shirts. Give me a free T-shirt, I'll keep it for a decade.
That's awesome.
So they gave me some free T-shirts, and I was like, yeah, whatever. It's a black shirt. Okay, cool.
Right. All right, cool.
Nice.
And then for you, Tyler, somebody says, dang, dude, haven't seen Mr. Yankee since my Twitter ban.
Oh, Mr. Priest. All right.
So,
I didn't know he was banned. I thought he just disappeared.
Twitter doing that sometimes.
Yeah.
So, all right, gentlemen, thanks for joining me. And we'll see you next month. Who knows what we'll talk about? Maybe Jacob will come back. I think he just had a lot going on. So I think everybody reaches out to him to do debates, I think. So I've got one coming up not with him, but on his show, I think, or something like that. So look forward to that, folks. I got a debate. It's not as cool as a documentary, but anyway. So, all right, gentlemen, I'm going to put you backstage. I'm going to close the show out.
Thanks.
All right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed the show. Make sure you come back later and, let the thoughts swirl around your head and then just drop a comment in. It helps out the algorithm, kind of lets it know that there's something important that people should watch. So help out the channel a little bit. Make sure you come back and check out the links from Adam, help him out. And tomorrow morning, remember, 7:30 a.m., I'm going to have Joshua Umba on for Ohio State Representative. So I look forward to that conversation. And again, remember, folks, I am not here Wednesday morning because I will be on a field trip with my son. So we're doing some cool stuff there. Anyway, with that being said, I'm out.
You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and buy me a coffee, because every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.